Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we'll provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's take a look at the headlines first. India hits out at Pakistan over terrorism, POJK crackdown at UNHRC. POJK protests intensify as women and school children join mass movement. And Pakistan sentences rights activist Maharang Baloch to life imprisonment. India has mounted a strong diplomatic offensive against Pakistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council, accusing Islamabad of institutionalizing terrorism as an instrument of state policy while exposing its human rights record in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At the 62nd session of the UNHRC in Geneva, India dismissed Pakistan's allegations on Jammu and Kashmir, instead drawing global attention to cross-border terrorism, the worsening situation in POJK, and Pakistan's continued use of terrorist proxies. A report.
India launched a sharp attack on Pakistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council, accusing it of harboring, financing and sponsoring terrorism for decades. Speaking during the 62nd session of the UNHRC in Geneva, New Delhi rejected Pakistan's allegations on Jammu and Kashmir, accusing Islamabad of spreading misinformation to deflect attention from its own internal crisis, state-sponsored terrorism and deteriorating human rights situation in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's first Secretary to the United Nations, Anupama Singh, described Pakistan as a living example of a Frankenstein state, facing the consequences of the very extremist groups it nurtured. Her remarks came against the backdrop of repeated admissions by senior Pakistani leaders, including Defence Minister Khwaja Asif, acknowledging that Pakistan had trained and supported terrorist organizations for decades as part of its security policy. India has consistently maintained that terror groups such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed have operated from Pakistani soil with state patronage, carrying out attacks against India while enjoying safe havens across the border.
Mr. Vice President, this is the country where the sitting defense minister boasts of hosting, training and deploying terrorists as state policy, and yet Pakistan calls itself a victim of terrorism. Indeed, a paradox which only Pakistan could sustain. It is a living example of a Frankenstein state which is shocked when its own monster bites back.
The Indian diplomat also highlighted the worsening situation in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, saying the region has become a symbol of political repression, economic neglect and denial of basic rights. In recent months, POJK has witnessed widespread protests led by Jammu Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee over soaring electricity tariffs, inflation, wheat shortages and rising taxes. Demonstrations in Rawalakot, Muzaffarabad and other towns have repeatedly been met with heavy-handed crackdowns, internet restrictions and mass arrests. Rights groups and local activists have alleged excessive use of force against protesters demanding affordable electricity, employment and constitutional rights. Referring to the unrest, Singh said demands for bread, electricity and dignity were met with bullets and brutality, adding that decades of forced occupation and suppression had pushed the region into turmoil.
The ongoing tragedy in Rawalakot, the killing of hundreds of civilians and the brutal crackdown across Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir are the predictable outcome of a system built on forcible occupation and sustained through repression. Decades of military land grabs, demographic engineering and the denial of basic freedoms have brought matters to a point where even demands for bread, electricity, rights and dignity are met with bullets and brutality. This should surprise no one. An illegal and illegitimate occupation can be sustained only through force.
India also questioned Pakistan's continued reliance on the Indus Waters Treaty while simultaneously pursuing cross-border terrorism. India has also argued that 6-decade-old Indus Waters Treaty must reflect present-day realities, including changing technological, demographic and security conditions. Reaffirming India's position, Singh said Jammu and Kashmir is an integral and inalienable part of India and urged Pakistan to end its obsession with India and instead focus on addressing its own governance failures, extremism and deteriorating human rights record.
Mr. Vice President, our position on Indus Water Treaty is well known. It defies logic that a state which exports terror as an instrument of policy continues to demand the privileges of cooperation predicated on goodwill and friendship. It is equally undeniable that the treaty is now outdated. No technical arrangement can remain frozen in time while the world around it is transformed. A treaty negotiated in 1960 cannot be treated as a perpetual entitlement, which is insulated from accountability, detached from present-day realities, and untouched by the profound changes of the past 6 decades.
India's intervention at the UN Human Rights Council underscored New Delhi's continued effort to expose Pakistan's record on terrorism and human rights before the international community. By shifting the focus to Pakistan's support for terror networks and the unrest in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, India reinforced its long-standing position that Islamabad must end cross-border terrorism and address its own internal crisis instead of attempting to internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir.
The anti-government movement in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is showing no signs of slowing down. What began as protests over constitutional amendments and electoral representation has now transformed into one of the biggest mass movements the region has witnessed in recent years. With women, students and even children joining the demonstrations, the movement has entered its 3rd week amid allegations of excessive force by Pakistani security agencies, internet shutdowns and growing humanitarian concerns. The Joint Awami Action Committee has warned of an even bigger mobilization if Islamabad fails to address its demands. A report.
Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir continues to witness widespread unrest as thousands remain camped at Rawalakote's Eidgah ground, demanding constitutional reforms and greater political rights ahead of the July 27 Assembly elections. What initially began as protests against changes in legislative representation has evolved into a broader movement challenging Islamabad's political control over the region. The Joint Awami Action Committee, spearheading the protests, has submitted a charter of 38 demands, including the restoration of constitutional safeguards and the abolition of 12 assembly seats reserved for refugees settled in Pakistan after 1947. Protest leaders argue that these seats allow Pakistan's mainstream political parties to influence governments in Muzaffarabad, undermining local democratic representation.
I think that the women had no choice but to join the protesters. So on one hand, they have joined the protest to show solidarity with their male, family members. But on the other hand, they are also protesting for the atrocities being committed against them. Children were shot at in the houses. Children were beaten. So the children are also now on the streets and joined. Young children standing by roadside, chanting Azadi, Azadi, So, and in the main places where the sit-ins are taking place, now we can see hundreds and hundreds of female there as well. And in a Muslim society, and women are not seen, like acting like that. They do go out and do the shopping and buy groceries and stuff. But our women never protested the way they are protesting now and chanting Azadi and making speeches.
The movement has also witnessed an unprecedented participation of women, students and school children. Across several towns, women have marched demanding what they describe as freedom from political and military control, while children have held placards calling for basic rights, free education and international attention. The growing participation of ordinary citizens reflects the widening scope of agitation, which has moved beyond electoral reforms to encompass broader political and governance issues. Reports from the region also indicate restrictions on internet services, making independent verification of developments increasingly difficult. According to local reports, at least 20 people have lost their lives and scores have been injured during the protests, although activists claim the actual toll could be significantly higher due to the communication blackout.
As far as the death toll is concerned, the figure of 20 is a very small figure. What I am, being informed of is more than 200 deaths, and but they cannot be verified because there is a total internet shutdown. There is a total communication and information blackout at the moment, and whatever is trickling out of Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir in form of videos or information is only due to some people braving themselves to walk to the hilltops close to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and getting signals from there and using innovative methods to catch signals and send messages. So the death toll is very controversial, and the other thing is this about law and order. What law and what order? Today there is total anarchy as far as Pakistani military forces are concerned. They are acting they are acting like an invading army.
The Joint Awami Action Committee has warned that if Islamabad fails to respond to its demands, it will organize a march of more than 1 lakh people from Rawalakot to Muzaffarabad. The continued mobilization, despite restrictions and security measures, underscores the scale of public participation and the persistence of the ongoing agitation. As Pakistan prepares for elections in the region next month, the protests pose a significant political challenge for Islamabad and raise fresh questions over governance, political representation, and civil liberties in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
Pakistan's Balochistan province is once again under the international spotlight after a Pakistani anti-terrorism court sentenced prominent Baloch rights activist Dr. Maharang Baloch to life imprisonment. While Pakistani authorities maintain the conviction is linked to terrorism and the killing of a paramilitary soldier during a protest, rights groups and her supporters have denounced the verdict as politically motivated, calling it another attempt to silence peaceful dissent. The ruling has sparked widespread protests across Balochistan and renewed global scrutiny of Pakistan's human rights record in the province. Here's our report.
आपने आज तक ये सवाल जो है ना आप में से किसी ने भी नहीं देखा कि बलूचिस्तान के साथ में चल रहा है असद बलोच को
Balochistan has remained at the center of Pakistan's internal conflict for decades, with recurring allegations of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and restrictions on political dissent. Human rights organizations have repeatedly expressed concern over the shrinking space for peaceful political activism and the use of anti-terrorism laws against activists and critics of the state.
बलूचिस्तान के वसाइल की लूटमार के लिए बलोच नस्ल कुशी की गई है.
Against this backdrop, one of the most prominent Baloch rights campaigners, Dr. Maharang Baloch, has been sentenced to life imprisonment by an anti-terrorism court. She and fellow activist Sibghatullah Shahji were convicted on charges of murder and terrorism in connection with the killing of a paramilitary soldier during a protest in Gwadar in 2024. According to prosecutors, the two incited a mob that fatally attacked paramilitary soldier Shabir Ahmed. However, Dr. Maharang Baloch was arrested in March 2025 while participating in what supporters described as a peaceful sit-in protest in Quetta.
जिस तरीके से बलूच यकजहती कमेटी के गिरफ्तार क़यादत के केसेस में अचानक से तेज़ी लाई गई, जेल कोर्ट से लेकर फेसलेस ट्रायल्स तक, और फेसलेस ट्रायल में वीडियो लिंक के ज़रिए बार बार हेयरिंग डेट देना और अदालत की जानिब से जो एक फ्रस्ट्रेशन, एक बेचैनी है, वो वाज़े थी। और जिस तरीके से प्रोसिक्यूटर का बार बार इस बात पर जोर देना कि ट्रायल किया जाए और इनको कन्विक्ट किया जाए, तो इस बात पर हमें बखूबी अंदाज़ा था कि ऊपर से आए गए अहकामात अदालत को मिल चुके हैं और अब जल्द अदालत अपनी फॉर्मेलिटी पूरा करने के लिए कार्रवाई करेगी। कल यानी 22 जून को ATA में जिस किस्म की गैर मुनसिफाना सज़ा हुई है, वो हम समझते हैं कि ना सिर्फ फेयर ट्रायल के ऊपर बल्कि इस मुल्क के आइन और कानून का भी जनाजा है।
The verdict has intensified political tensions across Balochistan, with activists warning that the sentencing reflects a broader pattern of suppressing peaceful political mobilization in the province. Supporters of Dr. Mehrang Baloch argue that imprisoning prominent leaders will not diminish demands for justice, accountability, and an end to enforced disappearances. Instead, they say the ruling is likely to deepen public resentment and strengthen the resolve of those campaigning for political and human rights.
इतने अरसे से आप गुज़िश्ता 75-76 सालों से यही करते आ रहे हैं, लेकिन आपने देखा है कि उसके कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या हुए हैं। आज भी जो अमल आपने दोहराया है, जो जिस किस्म की एक नाइंसाफ़ी आपने बलूच यकजहती कमेटी के रहनुमाओं के साथ किया है, हम समझते हैं कि आप शायद इसको सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं कि ये आपके लिए एक बहुत बड़ी फतह है, लेकिन हम समझते हैं कि ये आपकी एक बहुत बड़ी कम अकली और बेवकूफ़ी है कि आप समझ रहे हैं कि महरंग को जेल में डालने से आपने पुरअमन आवाज़ों को कैद किया है और आप पुरअमन जो जद्दोजहद की कॉन्सेप्ट है, आप उसको ख़त्म करके आप इसको सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं। ये हम समझते हैं कि आपकी कम अकली है, ना कि आपकी समझदारी।
The verdict has also drawn strong condemnation from Sindhi and Pashtun rights organizations. In response, the Baloch Yakjehti Committee called a province-wide shutdown across Balochistan, with widespread participation as markets and businesses remain closed in several areas. The sentencing has once again brought international attention to allegations of enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrests, and restrictions on political dissent in Balochistan. The latest developments come amid continuing unrest, with nationalist groups accusing Pakistani authorities of using security laws to suppress political activism, while the government says the measures are necessary to combat militancy and maintain law and order.
The sentencing of Baloch rights activist Mehrang Baloch to life imprisonment by an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan has brought renewed international attention to developments in Balochistan. The verdict has sparked debate over political dissent, civil liberties, and the broader security situation in the province. To discuss the significance of the case, its implications for the Baloch rights movement, and the current situation in Balochistan, we are joined by Hakeem Baloch, Baloch activist and the member of the Baloch National Movement. Hello, sir. Welcome to Newsweek South Asia. My first question to you is, Baloch activist Mehrang Baloch has now been sentenced to life imprisonment by an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan. What is your reaction to the verdict?
The judgment itself and the way the trial went, it was a sham. There was no, judiciary, no law were followed, and no due process, were followed in this trial. And they accused Dr. Mehrang Baloch, Sidqatullah Shaji, and other. They were not given a chance to put their points, their arguments, and even if they were given the chance, but the military, the FC, the Frontier Corps were the one who was actually, holding the proceedings. It was not the judges, it was not the court, it was not the judiciary that actually written that sentence. It was the military who already had in their mind that they're going to use this trial against the Baloch leaders and activists to suppress them and to silence the Baloch voice for their rights in Balochistan.
For viewers who may not know her well, who is Maharang Baloch and why has she become such an influential voice in Balochistan?
Maharang Baloch and other activists, they took the lead of the Baloch Yekjehati Committee, the BYC, who she is leading now. And since then, she has become a very much prominent voice, from being nominated to the 100 most influential people for the BBC, or being nominated in the Times, or being one of the nominated persons for Nobel Peace Prize award. And she was also a voice that not only heard in Balochistan, in other parts of Pakistan, but also internationally. So that is why the Pakistani state has seen her as a threat, because she was exposing the crimes of the Pakistani army in Balochistan, and she was becoming the voice of those helpless mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, daughters, and whose loved one was missing in Balochistan.
There have been concerns over the use of anti-terrorism laws against political dissent. From your perspective, is this another example of that trend?
See, they don't have a proof against Dr. Mara. They don't have a case on which they can actually try her. They could have actually silenced her. So they made up this story, because on that day, which they're mentioning, the whole week, there was many Baloch activists were killed by the Pakistani military personnel. Inside Gwadar, outside Gwadar, people who were trying to travel from across Balochistan, they put containers on the road to put obstacles to stop them from joining. There was incidents where they actually opened fire on the buses and other vehicles. So yes, Pakistani state has been using all the available means to suppress the Baloch voices. And this one, they're trying to set a precedent, because Dr. Maharang Baloch is a very prominent voice among the youth, among the generation who is actually being most affected and most impacted, be it the victim of enforced disappearances, be it the victim of arbitrary detention, or they are being profiling against them in Balochistan.
How would you describe the current situation on the ground in Balochistan? Has it become more restrictive for ordinary citizens?
So, for Baloch people, Balochistan has always been like a cage, and because there have never been a day where Baloch people were allowed to openly raise their voice, or to openly, express their opinion, their political opinion, or their opinion on how their, the minerals of Balochistan should be used, or how the life of Baloch people should get better, or why the Baloch are kept in a country without their consent. So they never had this right, and it is the same till today. Now the situation, daily situation in Balochistan is obviously increasingly becoming worse and worse day by day. What we have seen in past, that the Pakistani army has abducted the male part of the society, the political activists, and doctors, lawyers, engineers. At the beginning, it was just abductions, torture, and leaving them. And then it became abduction, torture, and kill and dump policy.
What message do you believe the sentencing of one of Balochistan's most prominent rights activists sends to the people of the region and to those advocating for civil rights?
Obviously, the message which Pakistan sends, it's a clear one that Baloch are not even human. But what we want to tell the world is we are as human as anyone else. We are as deserving of freedom, of sovereignty, of dignity as any other human being. We are not comparing ourselves in that sense with anyone else. But what we are telling the world you should be looking Balochistan situation as it actually is, without the lenses of the Pakistani state, because the Pakistani state is lying. They have never allowed a UN rapporteur or an independent journalist to visit Balochistan for over 2 decades now, and then the same army claims that it is an integral part of the Pakistan, but that integral part of Pakistan, which they claim is already broken, and it will soon be very much far, far away from Pakistan.
Thank you so much for giving us your time, sir.
Thank you very much. No problem. Thank you.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views, and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@nin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.